In the last video, we looked at the process of submitting a variation to change permanently the details of an emissions trading permit. For this video, we're going to be looking at notifications, which generally speaking are, basically to advise us of changes to the permit or changes to the monitoring methodology for a number of reasons. It's accessible via the same principal route, so we click on AEM permit first, we click on the request to start a change request, and the four options that were presented previously are there again. You'll notice that whilst our previous variation has been submitted and is being determined, it's not possible for us to initiate another change. I mean, if it were necessary to amend an existing variation, the best route through is to actually speak to the technical officer concerned and to advise them of the anything that needs to go in as an additional change. They may then choose to return the whole thing back to you for you to amend, or may make the changes on your behalf and basically consolidate those all within a single change request. But anyway, back to notifications. Notifications can be started at any point, and you can have as many simultaneous notifications as you actually need. So having clicked on the button to start a notification, just asked to confirm that I definitely do want to do that. And again, as before, it's a very similar layout, this time for the notification homepage, telling me the status, the tasks that are applicable at this point, and the button to open the notification form. As mentioned in the last video, the notification is equivalent to the ETS8 notification of change spreadsheet that we previously used. We've made some slight changes to this to hopefully make it a bit more intuitive to use. So we're asking, in the first instance, a question which is basically to cite the reasons for actually submitting a notification. So it may be, and we've tried to sort of narrow these down to what's required under the regulations and or the permit conditions. We've obviously left in any other factor, if there's anything that sort of you feel that needs to be notified that doesn't fall under one of the previous categories, but hopefully that they should be fairly obvious. So we'll go through these one by one, and then we'll pick one to actually submit. But it's just worthwhile having a look at each option to see what additional questions are asked. So the very first one, temporary closures of the installation. So we're talking here about a cessation of the Schedule 1 activity, which according to the current definitions is anything longer than 50 days. So you're asked in the first instance to provide the start date of the temporary closure. I'm assuming this is a retrospective notification, so I'm going to set it back to a date in July. A description and reasons for the temporary closure. So I'm going to say it's extended maintenance of boiler. I'll assume that it took until the 1st of October to complete, 2011. And evidence to support the restart date, we could say that it's a retrospective notification. Boiler has now restarted, and we may choose to attach some evidence, so for example a contractor's report or sign off of the job that substantiates that the site is now back up and running. Within the additional information section, it would be possible for us to actually attach the evidence, and it's a very good idea to do that, so that when the notification is received and assessed by the technical officer, they can sort of see the evidence that qualifies what you actually said. So in this particular case, very important that we have a start and end date, even where that's not actually known. So for example, if the maintenance that we talked about here had extended beyond October, and we weren't anticipating it back until much later in December, we've got to provide, or you must provide, your best estimate of when that's going to restart. because clearly there's some fairly major implications in terms of a closure that may be deemed to be not temporary. A permanent closure would obviously require you as an operator to submit an application to surrender that permit. Okay, so that's temporary closure of the installation. If instead of submitting that, we look at a temporary change to the permitted installation, what we're looking at here is it could be, if we took the example of that maintenance, it could be very, very similar. And whilst the main boiler is out, we've opted to have a temporary boiler on site. This is obviously a different source of emissions, but because it's a very sort of narrow period of time, we don't really want to permanently vary the permit to include this particular source. And it's generally the case that as long as we're notified of it in advance, preferably, we can give agreement to such temporary changes. So our justification for not submitting a variation here is that it's temporary in nature, less than 2 months. The justification will be very specific to the circumstances, but the important thing is we're trying to explain why you as an operator feel that you shouldn't actually be filling in the variation form to permanently change your monitoring methodology, which is the correct way of doing it. But for instance, if this were a temporary, a few weeks, then it may be that by the time you've varied your permit to include a temporary boiler, that boiler has then left the site, and it would be necessary to vary the permit again to remove it. Okay, so that's a temporary change. A change or update to your application to the new entrant reserve. A very specific notification here that's required as part of the determination notice that goes out with the NER. So obviously operators they'll make their original application with evidence of the start date, of the capacity of the new equipment that's eligible for NER, and from time to time things may change before the equipment is actually commissioned and brought online. So typically it may be that there's a later than planned start date, or there may be a different capacity of gas engine, just for argument's sake. There is a qualifying question that says, has the start date changed? I mean, this is perhaps a more typical reason for notifying a change, and if, for argument's sake, we knew that the start date couldn't be met or it had already been passed, and we're now looking at a later start date, it's just information that can be used to redetermine that particular application and result in a new determination notice going out confirming the revised eligible allowances an operator is able to receive. Closely related is the requirement to actually notify commencement of a new entrant activity. The existing ETS8 form does actually cover this, but it's more usual for us to receive notification via email or similar communications. So again, here it's just very, very simple. We have commenced an activity, but it has to be a date that's in the past. It's not possible to set a date that's before today. And a further qualifying question to prompt the operator to confirm that the new entrant activities that they have commenced are as per the original information submitted in their application, or any notifications that have resulted in change there. So as long as the operator is able to tick yes, then there's no further questions. If the answer to that question is no, then a description of the changes is necessary. So it might be the case that there was a lower capacity gas engine installed compared to the original application, and that factor will be used to redetermine the NER again before the allocation notice can go out. Slightly contentious option next, factor preventing compliance with any permit conditions. So what we're looking for here is some kind of a notification of the sort of scale and extent of the non-compliance. and it may be, for example, that one of the meters that you use as part of your monitoring and reporting methodology, it might be a third-party supplier meter, which malfunctioned for whatever reason, which meant that you couldn't then measure your activity data as per the monitoring and reporting plan attached to your permit. So to demonstrate this failure of main meter. Reason why the factors preventing compliance, fairly obvious. You're not able to generate activity data. And then the final question, partially final, is the non-compliance in respect to the monitoring and reporting methodology? Well, in this particular case it is, which results in a further 3 questions asking us what our interim methodology has been adopted. So this could be, an alternative meter, or it could be some proposal to use historic data, or on a sort of worst case average basis, or similar. Proof of the necessity for a change. Well, in this particular case, it's failure of the permitted meter. So basically repeating what we said earlier. The measures taken to ensure prompt restoration of compliance. It could be that you're at you're reliant on the supplier mending that meter, but some information to ensure that we as a competent authority know that you've got this matter in hand and that you are working as quickly as practicable to restore compliance. So I just saved the form there. Need to fill in that last section. As I said, it's possible to add additional information to any of these, to the form as a whole, and basically anything that you consider may be relevant that could be used to aid the technical officer in assessing that notification. When we click the submit button on this particular form, on the notification form, this will go straight to the competent authority. There's obviously no payment or any other sort of workflow related to this particular workflow. So this one will go straight to this competent authority, and you should hear back within less than 2 weeks to confirm that the competent authority is happy with the proposal or happy with the change, and there may be other impacts in terms of permits or notices that come about because of that. But that in summary is notifications.